Hi everybody, Lloyd Feinstein. I'm a career counselor and advisor, and let me give you my elevator pitch. What I do is I help executives like yourself to discover, define, and then articulate your value to a prospective employer. And I do that using what I think are the best concepts in the job market. And interestingly enough, most of them come out of sales and marketing. The nature of the problem that you're faced with is basically that it's a sales problem. And the interesting thing is we know how to solve sales problems. You apply sales solutions to the sales problem. So if everything sounds familiar to those of you who have touched sales and marketing, it's because it comes out of sales and marketing. So this will be, I think, an approach that you'll identify with and you'll be able to easily transfer. Now everybody should have three basic pieces of material. First is the handout entitled Positioning Yourself in the Senior Level Job Market. Second is the data sheet, which is confidential. I'll be sending you some really good material. And finally is the business card. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you, just as an illustration of an interesting point, I'd like you to take out your business card if you have one and put it next to my business card. Okay, would you do that, please? Okay, once you have the two cards next to each other, would you turn the cards over? And one of the interesting things you're going to see is that you stopped selling and I'm still selling, including one of my mission statements, helping people to reinvent themselves. Your business card can be a mini resume. People don't have software to save resumes on their PC, but they do have software to save business cards, don't they? So the whole concept here is you have to learn to sell yourself. Interesting. I've been doing this now for 20 years. And I offer free consultation, as you see on the front of the handout. And everybody comes to me with the same two problems. It's absolutely amazing. It doesn't matter the industry, it doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter the educational background. Everybody has the same two problems. The first problem is they don't know the product they're selling. The second problem is they don't know where they want to go next. So if you have those two problems, you're about average. And we're going to go into all of that in great detail. Now let me tell you first about the major problem you're going to have in the job search, or you're currently wrestling with. And this problem will exist right here in the classroom, and that is, how do you deal with the information that you hear? I'm going to be saying a lot of things that are very unconventional. Why do you believe what I say versus what some of the books say? Now, I wrote a book in '82, and as I told you earlier, with two exceptions, everything in it is wrong. There are 280 books on resumes out there, current, and all of them are wrong. I'll try to convince you of that this morning. The information you're getting from outplacement is wrong. The information you get from your neighbor who got a job using their resume style is wrong. So the question is, how do you evaluate any of this information regardless of the source? And here's the way you do it. You compare it against your experience. If what I say this morning makes sense, then I would hope that you would grab onto it and run with it. If it goes contrary to your experience, I expect your hand to go up. I expect you to challenge me on the concepts. I'm going to say a lot of things that go contrary to the conventional wisdom. Okay? Okay. And let me just ask everybody, turn off your cell phones, please. Okay?
Just real quick.
Yes?
Why are some of the things you're going to convey with us go contrary to everything else?
The question is, why does what I say go contrary, well, some of what I say go contrary to what everybody else is saying? Because it doesn't, I guess the best way to answer that is that what I'm going to tell you reflects the hiring process accurately, the way it is practiced by the HR department. I'm going to tell you the information from inside the job market, rather than from somebody looking outside the job market. You follow me? All right. What happens to most people, and it's a really interesting dynamic, and this is the only way I know to explain it, is that when you're in the hiring position here, and you lose your position, you're in this position, you know how people hire, you know how you hire. But when you go from this position to this position, and now you're a candidate instead of the hiring executive, you go through this green cloud that causes selective amnesia, and you forget what you wanted when you were in this position. I'm going to remind you of exactly what you wanted in this position, and you'll see how everything that you're doing, the conventional wisdom, violates the way you yourself recruited and hired people. Selective amnesia. You're all suffering from it. We'll try to correct that this morning. Okay, so yeah, if I say something that goes contrary, I expect you to challenge me, okay? All right. Let me read you two interesting quotes. One is from Madeleine Albright, the former Secretary of State. She was talking about the crisis in Yugoslavia, but it applies directly to your job search. She says, tactical energy in a strategic and conceptual void is a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what you're doing. What most people do when they see the handwriting on the wall or they get laid off is they take a bad document and they update it. So now they have an updated bad document. And they immediately run out and contact their best networking contacts. You have absolutely no business talking to your best contacts. You don't know the product you're selling. It's not defined. And these people have no good sales collateral material to help you. So the net effect is your job search goes nowhere. Well, why should it go anywhere? You've got a bad document. You don't know what you want. You expect the hiring executive to manage your career? It doesn't work that way. If you don't know the product you're selling, you expect me, a complete stranger, to buy it? It doesn't work that way. And you know that. Second, this is from Gary Hamill, a British consultant who specializes in strategy. Comes from a fabulous article that you ought to get a hold of. It's called Strategy as Revolution. Harvard Business Review, July, August of '96, I believe. Listen to this quote. He says, there can be no innovation in the creation of strategy without a change in perspective. And that's exactly what we're going to do this morning. I'm going to make an attempt to change your perspective on how people hire. And in doing that, you'll be better positioned in the job market. Okay. Two additional quotes. One is Vince Lombardi's definition of luck. Anybody know it? He said, luck is preparation meeting opportunity. Write that down, please. Luck is preparation meeting opportunity. What good is the interview if you don't know the product that you're selling? What good is being in front of the best networking contacts if you don't know the product? Don't do it. One of the things I'm going to recommend is that you stop the job search and you take a hard look at everything you're currently doing and measure it against some of the ideas, the concepts, the strategies that I'm going to share with you this morning. Okay? The other is the question of confidence. Where does confidence come from? Anybody? Preparation. Knowledge of the subject, absolutely. So what confidence really is a two-sided coin. The first part is knowing the product, knowing your accomplishments. The second, and by the way, that's very difficult because of the famous quote from Pogo, who said, "We met the enemy, and he is us." Abraham Lincoln was a little more eloquent. He says, "The attorney that tries his own case has a fool for a client." The one that I like best is from Phil Simms, the former quarterback for the New York Giants. He was quoted as saying the following. This is a sports writer from the Star Ledger. He says, "Phil Simms knew that system as well as anyone, and he admits to having his share of problems learning the new coach's scheme." Quote, "It was terrible at first," he said. "It's not so much learning the new offense, it's forgetting the old one. That was by far the hardest thing," close quote. And that's the problem that you're faced with right now. It's not learning what I'm going to teach you here today. That's not the problem. The problem is, when you get into an interview, unless you go through a process to absorb this information, what you're going to do is what everybody does. You're going to retreat to the familiar, and you're going to wing it. And it's not going to work. So my recommendation is to grab onto these concepts and work hard at them so that you can erase the slate and rewrite on the slate with these new ideas. Okay. The final point, and this comes from George Bernard Shaw. It was publicized by a group called the Financial Executives Institute. George Bernard Shaw said the greatest problem with communication is the illusion that it's been accomplished. And that's exactly what you've done with the document. When we get to the resume a little later on in the program, I'm going to quote from some of the resumes that you were good enough to bring with you today, and you'll see exactly why that's the case. Okay, now, let me give you 4 things that I'm going to cover in the program, and we'll go through it and then we'll come back to it. The first thing is I'm going to get you to think like the hiring influence, not like a candidate. That's the first and probably the most important thing that we're going to accomplish this morning. Second, you're going to recognize that you only have 10 seconds of the reader's time, regardless of what you send into an organization. That's all you have. Third, I'm going to tell you how to avoid gatekeepers, and that came up very early in the discussion of the problems that people face. And finally, I'm going to show you how to manage the job search with no surprises for the reader. Because, and this is an important point that you probably don't understand, but as far as the reader of your resume is concerned, they see the document as a risk reduction document. And we're going to get into that a little later on. Okay? All right. Any questions so far? Okay. What I'd like to do is first go through a job search model that you have in your materials. There's basically 5 steps to the job search. Analyzing the product. That's yourself. Determining what the employer wants. Once you've done those 2 steps, you then combine the results. Now that you know what the employer wants, you're able to pick and choose your accomplishments to match the need of your audience. Classic marketing. Step 3, develop your marketing materials. And there's a lot of marketing materials. One of the biggest patterns I've seen in the last 3 to 5 years is that it's not enough to be able to get into the door for the interview. You need very good sales collateral materials to close. Because when you get up and walk out the door, the person you interviewed with becomes your salesperson. And if you don't make it easy for people to buy, guess what? We'll defix it. We'll put it in the circular file. Did we receive your resume? Yes, we did, and we filed it. All right? So, once you've done this, you develop your marketing materials. Not only the resume and the cover letters, but marketing letters, best candidate for the position summary, deal sheets, and the most important piece is a proposal. I call it the get the job by doing the job proposal, usually 2 pages. And you need to develop these additional sales support pieces after a second interview. Okay? Once you have your marketing materials developed, targeted means that it's related specifically to an audience. I'm going to get to the audience shortly. Step 4 is very familiar. It's the campaign mechanics. There's only 4 ways you can look for work. There's the ads and the internet. And by the way, all the statistics say that the internet generates and fills 4% of the jobs at any point in time. So let me ask the group a question. Why are you spending 70% of your job search effort in front of the computer?
It's educational. It's easy.
It's educational. Yes, but it doesn't pay the bills.
It's just easy.
It's easy.
Tells you who's hiring.
Okay?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of
Excuse me.
jobs on the internet though aren't real jobs.
We have a question in the back. Yes.
How about for the IT industry? Is that number skewed? Is that still 4%?
It's skewed for the IT industry.
Okay.
There's no doubt about that.
If that's the case, how do you
Yes.
jive the fact that every headhunter after headhunter I talk to,
Right.
30 people I've known for 20 plus years,
Right.
who I consider to have a good head on their shoulders,
Yes.
will tell you that corporation after corporation, they're being told we're filling all the jobs through the internet. They can't even get candidates in the door. Even on retained searches, after a period of time, they're being pulled off them. And the VP of HR decrees we're going to do it through the internet because it's going to save money.
Certainly a lot of the jobs are filled through the internet, but most of what the internet does is provide individual candidates, provides individuals that form the expectation of what is out there. But the statistics show that there's no more than 4 or 5% of the jobs filled. I've been doing this ever since '84. I don't know how long the internet's been around, maybe 8, 9 years or something like that. And I can tell you that I've only had one client at the senior level. He was a CIO that got a position off of the internet. One.
I have 2.
All right?
I got my last one.
Okay. Yes.
I think it's important that you define what it means by getting a job off the internet as well. And the second point is going to make this the positional piece. Hiring off the internet to some people might be accepting resumes by email. And we hire off the internet in my company. We advertise. We do all kinds of other ways to generate the leads, but the leads typically come in through email, and that's how we get them. So I think it's important to think about it.
Okay. Clearly, companies, HR departments can get an idea of the quality of the people out there, their pricing, etc., etc. But at the senior level, it still is either networking, direct mail, or recruiters. And don't underestimate recruiters, especially if you do their job for them, which is the whole approach I'm talking about this morning. We'll get into that a little later on. Yes?
I was just
Okay,
going to
go
say
ahead.
that my last position I got off the internet,
Okay.
and it was a software company.
Second way people find positions is through agencies. There's 2 types of agencies. You have the headhunters, also called the executive search consultants, also called retained search firms. They work like like attorneys. They work off of a retainer. They get paid up front. They do nothing on speculation. Those firms usually work on positions over $85,000. Under are the employment agencies. They do everything on speculation. Don't avoid agencies because they have these business relationships that you want to tie into. Now let me ask you a simple question. You're running a small company, all right? And as you built this company, you worked with an employment agency, not a headhunter. All of a sudden, you're at $70, $80 million and you need to hire a heavyweight. Who do you think the president of that company is going to go to? A complete stranger that does executive search or work with the employment agency?
Probably the employment agency.
He's going to work with the employment agency, even though the employment agency individual has never done executive search. Don't ignore those two groups. Okay. And the third way people find work is through what is called the hidden job market. 2/3, this is a great statistic, 2/3 of all positions at any point in time aren't advertised. And they aren't placed within an employment agency. How are they filled? Anybody?
Networking.
Right, the old boy and the old girl network. All right? But the other thing you should know, and I saw this twice as a personnel director, is that at any point in time, 2/3 of all the jobs were newly created. So if they're newly created, in whose head is the job? You're right. It's the senior executive. It's not HR. We'll get to that shortly. And then finally, networking is the final way that you obtain a position. The last part in the hiring model is the interview. You can do everything right. You get in the interview. You can't sell the product. You're not going to close. So one of the things I recommend that you do is you interview backward. I also recommend that you answer ads, any kind of advertisements from any source, backward. And you also network backward. You know the famous story about the out-of-town couple, never been to New York City, they get into a cab, and the wife says to the cabbie, how do we get to Carnegie Hall? And he turns around and looks at her and says, practice, lady, practice. You want to get good at the interview process? You don't interview with the best firms, the A firms. You interview first with your rehearsal firms, your C companies. Then you move up to the Bs, and then you move up to the As, which are your recitals. So therefore, when you're mailing to ads, take the ads and divide them into the 3 categories. The best companies, the okay companies, and the dogs. And interview with the dogs first. There's only one way to get good at interviewing, and that's the interview. There's only one way to get good at salary negotiation, and it's the exact same way.
But you gotta get the interview.
That's true. We're going to talk about how to get the interview. Okay. Now, let me ask the group this question. As far as the job search model is concerned, where do you think most people jump into the model when they see the handwriting on the wall or they get their pink slip? What do you think is the first thing everybody does? Look at the model.
4.
Nope.
The resume?
Yep. 3. Right here. Oh, I've got to update my resume. So they update a bad document, they throw it against the wall, it doesn't stick. Why? Because it's a bad document. And the reason it's a bad document is because it doesn't satisfy the need of the hiring executive. So, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to show you and go over the elements of a model on how people hire. Okay? As I go through the model, I'm going to ask for your agreement on certain pieces. And you can vote yes, no, etc. And again, as I go through the model, if anything goes contrary to your experience, raise your hand and question it. Okay? All right. The basis of the counseling program that Career Marketing presents is based on the human condition. Let me see if I can get everybody's agreement on this. The single most important thing you need to know about the job market, if not everything in life, is that the person who gets hired or promoted is not the person who's best qualified. It goes instead to the person that is perceived to be the best qualified. Is there anybody here that doesn't agree with that? All right, we have 100% agreement. It's not reality that counts in the job market, it's perception of reality. And what's interesting, by working smarter, which I'm going to talk about this morning, and then working harder, you can outmarket the competition, regardless of age, sex, race, industry, physical condition, whatever prejudice you can think of. You can outmarket the competition, but you have to work smarter. I'll teach you those elements this morning. And then you have to work harder. Okay. From that concept, it's not reality but perception, flow 3 rules out of Sales and Marketing 101. Rule number 1, it's not what you want to sell, it's what the customer wants to buy. Is there anybody that disagrees with that? I'll give you an interesting story. I'm working with this gal, and I said to her, she was an administrative type, I said, why do you have this accomplishment on your resume? And she looked at me incredulously and she said, well, that accomplishment took me to San Francisco. And God, I loved San Francisco. The reader doesn't care what you love. So, let's see a show of hands. How many of you have an objective on your resume? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Don't you understand that as far as the reader is concerned, when they pick up your resume, I don't care what you want. That's your need. Your need doesn't count in the hiring equation. Don't tell me what you want. I'll tell you what I need. Yes?
I just want to question what you're saying.
Go ahead.
Because if you have done your homework and you have the, what I call the with me, the,
Yes.
what's in it for me concept, then your objective should strike right at the heart of what their needs are. So,
Okay.
I don't know if
All right.
listen, I'm
All right.
sitting here, so I'm
Okay.
not doing everything right
All right.
either,
All right.
but
The question is, if you've done your homework and you know what the hiring executive wants, which is quite an assumption, because most of the time they throw everything into the ad. Their musts, their preferred, and they come up with a document, and the last time there was a perfect candidate for this position was 2004 years ago. All right? They'll accept 60 or 70% of what's in the ad. You can't, if you talk to anybody in HR, they will tell you that hiring executives, especially at the senior level, hire based on the Supreme Court's definition of pornography. Anybody?
You know what it is when you see it.
I'll know it when I see it. Let me tell you an interesting story. One of my clients was a chief financial officer, and he got an interview with Marriott International in D.C. He interviewed for the comptroller position, which paid $400 grand, and he interviewed for an hour and a half with the chief financial officer. And at the end of the interview, he noticed 2 patterns. Number 1, this individual had no idea how to conduct a professional interview. And that's one of the dirty secrets that HR won't tell you. When you move up the pyramid, the ability of senior management to interview goes right into the toilet. They are arrogant and they never go into a classroom to learn how to conduct a professional interview. So how do they recruit? They recruit based on gut. I'll know it when I see it, correct? All right. The lady from HR in the back agrees. All I can tell you is from my experience, that's exactly what happens. The second thing he noticed when he left the interview is that this executive took little or no notes. Now let me ask you a question. You're that person, you come out of the interview. What's left with this individual? And his memory, an impression, the resume. Well, that impression will dissipate when he or she goes back to the office and there's 2 phone calls that are blinking, and there's 2 people sitting in front of his desk or her desk, and after a night's sleep. So that's the reason that sales collateral materials are so very important, because the hiring executive, the individual that's going to make the decision to buy or not buy, is really just winging it. And they're going by their guts.
Give you another dirty little secret. Most senior level HR people are no better than line managers.
That doesn't surprise me either, yes.
I've got an interview tomorrow, the second interview after the phone interview.
Right.
A few days ago, with the CEO of a small company. We're going to talk about.
What's the question?
Are you going to talk about later on about
Okay,
body
I
language
will.
clues to make sure that
I will provide. Now, this program is not the interview. That's a separate program. But I will provide an overview on how to better manage the interview process based on the concepts that we're going over this morning. Okay. So, rule number 1: it's not what you want to sell; it's what the customer wants to buy. Rule number 2: make it easy for the customer to buy. If you don't make it easy for the customer, they're going to take your document, put it in the circular file. Okay. Yes?
When you're speaking with
Collateral materials. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
The question is, when we speak about collateral materials, what are we speaking about? Yes, we're speaking about any materials other than the resume. It includes the thank you letter. I'm going to talk to you later on about a thank you letter that can go anywhere from 2 to 7 pages. And people say to me, I don't understand. How in God's name do you write a 2-page thank you letter, let alone a 7-page thank you letter?
How do you reconcile that with the comment you made before about the 10 seconds that we get when our resume is being screened?
Good question.
10 seconds that you get when you're trying to make an appointment?
Absolutely terrific. Okay.
So,
10 seconds to get their attention.
Sorry. The question is, how do you reconcile the 10-second window of opportunity that you have with the reader versus these long documents? We're going to go into that in great detail. If I don't answer it, please raise the issue at the end of the program. Okay. So the sales collateral materials are everything besides the resume. It's the thank you letter. It could be the best candidate for the position. It could be the proposal, get the job by doing the job. There's a whole bunch of different ways. It could be gifting. The article on strategy is revolution. When you read it, you'll see how good this article is, and you can use it as a gift in the interview process, in the follow-up process, etc., etc. Okay. So it's not what you want to sell, it's what the customer wants to buy. Number 2, make it easy for the customer to buy. And number 3, who is your customer? Let's take a look at this in detail. And on that, we have some charts to illustrate this. Let me make this perfectly clear. HR is the enemy. I know I've run the department twice. We don't hire except for the HR department. We don't hire for any other department except HR.
And how do you get
What
hired
we
into
do is
HR?
we screen for all the other departments.
How do you get hired into HR?
But we don't screen, I'll answer your question in a second. We don't screen in, we screen out. Now, as the gentleman is asking, if you want to work for HR, then HR becomes your hiring influence. And the question is, how do you get hired into HR? It's how you get hired into any of the areas that the audience is interested in. So let me continue with the concepts. Okay. Is there any questions regarding who your audience is? Well, I have one. If HR is the enemy, and the person that's going to be able to understand your resume, be able to evaluate your accomplishments, and if that is the hiring person, then why are you sending your materials to HR?
You don't know who the hiring person is.
You don't know who the hiring person is. Well, that's maybe the case, but that's not an excuse for sending your materials to HR.
Sometimes you know you, but you cannot reach the only person you can reach is the HR.
All I can tell you is your best friend in the job search is the reference librarian. Okay? Now let me give you an interesting concept. I'll tell it.
Can you explain what you mean by that? What's a reference librarian?
What is a reference librarian? That's a librarian that works in the reference part and they have every conceivable directory that you can want that'll identify any executive at any level. A lot of this is on CD-ROM, some of this is even online. Like, for example, you can find out the top 4 executives at almost every company, public or private, by going on hoovers.com. Okay? Question, yes?
In terms of not going to HR, something, you see something in more conventional means.
Okay. Okay.
The
Now,
guy who counts as HR,
Okay.
you find the exec most likely to be filling that position. What's the risk in sending the proper material to the exec rather than
Okay.
HR?
So the real question is, if you're going to avoid HR, who are you going to send it to, and what's the risk of doing that? Okay. Let me answer that question. First of all, a lot of companies, Johnson & Johnson included, insist that your material go through their website. Now, anything that goes into their website is going to go into something called the HRIS, which is the Human Resources Information System. And you're going to get buried. So my recommendation is that if you want to write to HR, send hard copy to the hiring executive. Let me give you an example. I'm working at Cadence Industries, a $130 million company. I'm director of human resources. I get a resume that's sent to me from the president, who's also the chairman, and he says, Lloyd, take a look at this individual, and he signs it Shelley. Well, you know what happens when I get a resume from the chairman, and he says to take a look at this individual? I take a look at this individual. You know why? It's called cover your you-know-what. Because if I'm walking down the hall going to the cafeteria and I bump into the chairman, he's got only one thing that he can say to me, and that is, Lloyd, what'd you do with that resume I gave you? If I don't have a good answer, I'm in trouble. So guess what? A resume coming down the organization, a marketing letter coming down the organization gets a much stronger read than if an HR executive, even the top HR executive, sends, say, a senior vice president of taxation a resume and says, Charlie, why don't you take a look at this candidate? Well, who are you to tell me what to do?
How do you feel about that as an HR person if you've already got the resume?
Okay. In other words, let me rephrase the question. How do I feel about the fact that the resume came down
When you've already got it?
when I've already got it? Well, first of all, it's a confirmation that I should take a look at the candidate, number one. Number two, it's not going to put my nose out of joint because I have to deal with it because it's coming from the senior executive who are my customers. Okay? There is a situation where it will annoy the daylights out of you. And that's where the job is been placed with an agency, especially the retained agencies, the headhunters. And you try to go around the headhunter and you go directly to HR or the hiring executive. Then what they do is they take that document and they give it to the recruiter, the headhunter. And the headhunter takes it and throws it in the garbage. Because you're trying to prevent them from earning their fee, or you're trying to damage their reputation. Don't go around the recruiter. But every time you see an ad, every time you see, and it doesn't matter who it says to send it to, respond twice. Electronically, it'll go to HR. But send hard copy to the hiring executive. Any question on who your audience is? The people that continually send to HR are basically those individuals that don't know better, or in all honesty, they're lazy. Yes?
When you send a letter to the hard copy to the chairman or the CEO, what are the percentage of the chance that he opens it himself?
Okay.
What do you think about this?
Great question. If you send, and I'm a big proponent of this, we're going to get to direct mail later on after the break. If you send, let's use Apple Computer, because I have a story based on a client I worked with who did public relations for 8 years in Japan, speaks it fluently, married a Japanese woman, came back to Jersey where I am. And he loves Apple computers, and he keeps telling me that they don't know how to advertise to the layperson. They know how to advertise to the creative people, but not the lay people. So I said to him, stop complaining to me about it and write a letter to Mr. Jobs, who happens to be the president, chairman, whatever else he has. So I finally got him to do it. We sent a one-page letter using the principles of direct mail that I'm going to share with you later. And 3 weeks after he mailed the letter, he received a telephone call from a woman that identified herself as the Senior Vice President of Corporate Communications for Asia Pacific, and the call came in from Tokyo. The first thing she said is, I received your letter that you sent to Mr. Jobs. I'll be at Macworld in a couple of weeks. Here's my telephone number. Call me at this time on this day. Now the question is, why did Mr. Jobs read his letter? Let me tell you something that perhaps you may be aware of or you may not be aware of. And you saw this in your own career. As you move up a pyramid with your promotions, you have to learn to do one thing extremely well. And that one thing is you have to learn to delegate. Because you can't do everything yourself. And as you delegate, you learn to delegate everything. And when you get to the top, you delegate everything with two exceptions. The first exception is the right to hire and fire, because that's where the power lies. The second thing you don't delegate is the right to go through your mail uncensored. Because whoever controls the information flow to you controls you. So the net effect is that you have the opportunity to speak to any executive for 10 seconds. It works. Okay? Any question on who your audience is? All right, let's move on. How does your audience look in a company? Okay. Let's assume this is you. Okay? And you have 4 direct reports, and this is the open position, and you want to fill this position. You basically have 2 motivations. The first motivation is to get the monkey off my back. Solve my problem, my need, my situation, my opportunity. That's the first motivator of the hiring person in filling this position. The second motivator is, and the young lady mentioned it, would you say it again? With them. What's in it for me? The most powerful radio station on the planet. And if you're not listening to this radio station, you're not managing your career. All right? Question. And I want to see, I want everybody to vote. Okay? So we have monkeys as a motivator, which is the problems. And we have with them, what's in it for me? How many think, now these are really 2 sides of the same coin, but one of them always comes first in the mind of the hiring executive. How many of you think that what's in it for me comes first in the mind of the hiring executive? Let me see your hands. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. How many think it's the problems? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? The correct answer is the monkeys, the problems. Let me give you an example. If you're district managers for Kellogg's, the cereal company, and the company comes out with a brand new product, guaranteed to get rid of bad cholesterol, so you don't have to take the expensive medication anymore. All you have to do is eat the cereal. Now, you all assume that you're not going to be able to keep the cereal on the shelves. It's going to just fly off the shelves, right? and you're going to see all of these bonuses and raises, etc., etc. But guess what? If you can't get shelf space in the mass merchandisers, in the supermarkets, in the Walmarts, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get a pink slip. Don't talk to me about a raise, a bonus, or a promotion. I'll talk to you about a pink slip. So the implication of this for the job search is enormous. That means that your hiring influence is not, I repeat, is not results-oriented. And they're not action-oriented. They're problem-oriented. There is only one issue in the job market at any point in time. Doesn't matter the economy, doesn't matter anything. The only issue in the job market is the monkeys, the problems on the hiring executive's back. So why are you talking about anything else? Because you're thinking like a candidate, you're not thinking like a customer.
Can I,
Yes.
check before I hear? Maybe I'm just not clear on what you're saying. Because if I were to take what you're saying very literally,
Yes.
which is probably not what you mean, I would assume that you want a resume that says all the things I've done, rather than all the things I've accomplished. Because an accomplishment is a whiffle.
Right.
And what I do is a monkey.
Your marketing materials. The question is, can the resume include everything? No. The resume, any of your marketing materials, have to demonstrate your ability to solve problems.
Why is that not a whiffle?
Because,
Why is that not an action?
like I said, why it's not an action and why it's not a result will be discussed further when we talk about a specific communication methodology, which I call PAR, problem, action, result. We're going to talk about this issue in much greater detail, and I'm almost positive I'll answer the question at that time. Okay?
I think I understand the confusion as well.
Go ahead.
Fixing the problem, surely. What is that? What is the underlying motivation? I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to get a pay rise. I'm going to get status. I'm going to, which are the what's in it for me.
Okay.
How do I get those things by fixing the problems?
Right. But in the communication situation you find yourself in, the reader is very skeptical, and they're not going to believe your results, and they're not going to believe your action. You'll see that as we go further. I'll give you some really interesting statistics.
In fact,
yes.
you probably can't possibly understand the issues you were dealing with in any specific accomplishment in most cases, particularly if it's somebody screening for a hiring.
Well, we're in agreement that the screeners are not your audience. Your audience is the hiring executive who understands what it takes to do these positions. Okay? The second thing you need to know is that the hiring influence speaks 2 languages. And your marketing materials have to be full of the 2 languages. The first language is jargon, the second language is numbers. But let me tell you something interesting. I have worked over the last 5 years with over 115 members of a financial group called the FENG, Financial Executive Network Group. Do we have anybody here that's a member? Do we have anybody here that's in finance? Because you should be a member. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. There's 17,000 members, and they're held together by a nightly email 5 out of 7 nights a week. It's fabulous. And I've worked with around 115 of these senior executives, and the one thing that drives me absolutely up a wall is that they don't use numbers. Now here you have a senior financial executive that's writing to another senior financial executive that's interested in filling a position that's a financial position, and they produce marketing materials that have no numbers in it. I haven't the foggiest idea where in God's name these people are coming from. The language of the hiring person is jargon and numbers. How can you not use numbers? Well, all I can tell you is they're thinking like a candidate. They're not thinking like the hiring executive. Your document has to be full of numbers. And it should be as accurate as possible. And don't round off. It's fantastic. In what is it, 5th grade, 6th grade, you're introduced to a long division, and nothing comes out even. Until you get into the job market and you have to create a resume, and then you create a resume, and everything comes out even. And all the numbers look like they're phony. If there are any, don't do it. Any question on the hiring person? You understand their motivation. First and foremost, solve my problem. Make me look good. Help me get a raise, a bonus, a promotion. Okay?
I think I would challenge your assumption that the hiring manager knows how to do all those jobs. I mean,
He knows.
a CIO might work for a CFO, for instance. I wouldn't like to see many CFOs in the CIO position.
And vice versa.
I've seen finance heads in charge of salespeople.
That's wacko.
You know,
That's yeah, absolutely. You know, because you see this kind of stuff doesn't mean it works or it's right.
But I mean,
But there's a basic concept, and you know this, that if you're a district sales manager and you're supervising these 4 sales representatives, if you've never been a sales representative, you're in trouble, because these people can run circles around you with all of the different excuses. How come you didn't submit a call report? And they start to tell you all of the ways that they can. But if you've been there, they can't fool you. It's I think, a sign of a weak organization where they put the wrong manager supervising the wrong function. But it happens. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
I'm assuming when you're saying hiring influence, it's not the highest level of the organization. It's the direct level above you.
It's
In
the
the
level
organization.
above the position you want.
You're seeking.
That's correct.
Okay.
In other words, this is the person that you want to write to for this position.
Right.
Yes.
So if a CFO is going to hire me, there's no point in me sending anything to a CEO.
Well, it depends. If you can't, in doing your research, you can sometimes find out who this person is. Sometimes you can't. If you can't, then send it to some of the other individuals, because they know who that person is in the organization. And if they like the paper,
Gotcha.
if it makes it easy for them, if it shows quality and value, they'll pass it along. That's the reason I think it's so much better to go to Hoover's, find out who the top executives are, even though you want a position that's under a controller and you can't get the name of the controller without having to subscribe to these services, which are expensive, so send it to the CFO. If the CFO has good communication with his controller, he knows that there's an open position for an assistant controller. It's always much more powerful coming down the organization.
Yeah, I've seen a concept called matrix marketing, which tells you that what you should be doing is identifying 5 people in that organization, a couple of levels above, and even perhaps a couple of levels on the same
I agree
level.
with that.
And at that particular point, tailoring your presentation to those positions and doing that.
Absolutely.
Now you've flooded that particular organization if it's a targeted one.
Now, a lot of people are hesitant in doing that because they don't know how it's going to be received inside the company. Well, number one, it says that you're persistent, right? And if you get 2 different referrals from 2 different individuals, that works to your advantage. Right. I worked with a woman that was a senior public relations executive, and she worked with me not because she wanted to get the resume, which is, I think, the best you'll ever see, but she worked with me because she wanted me as a sounding board, and she was going to do direct mail. So when we finished, she developed a proposal, a 2-page proposal, with the cover letter. And she researched her industry in the tri-state area, and there were only 47 PR firms. She did a mailing of 150 pieces all at the same time, which of course meant that she hit each of these outfits at least 3 times. All right? It generated 10 inquiries. One of the 10, I think around half of them interviewed her, one hired her. And no, she didn't worry about whether or not one person was going to look at it different than another.
Excuse
Okay.
me, just before you
Yes.
do that, Sean, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm speaking too much, please. It's very interesting that you talk to going to the senior folks.
Yes.
And indeed, I have done that.
Your question.
Successfully. However, when that resume filtered down to someone that one might report to,
Right.
when the job was available, the wording and the commentary that got the senior management, the top management interest,
Right.
was the very threat to the people that interviewed me. And
Okay.
that's kind of why I was focusing
Okay.
on the what's in it for me section, because I think,
All right.
I don't know how to balance
The
those
question
two.
is, if the document comes down from the hiring executive to lower levels, how do you deal with the fact that your wording in the document may be viewed at a lower level as a threat versus the higher level? Well, that means that you have to do a better job, and you have to be conscious of that issue during the interview. You have to talk specifically about the way you like to mentor the people you work with, including your boss, and that you're perfectly satisfied staying in this position X number of years. And no, I'm not a person that's ready to climb the ladder. You have to diffuse that issue with the hiring person.
So you're saying do it verbally now?
Absolutely. Don't expect the document to do that. All right, let's take a look at the rest of the hiring model. Now, there's two important concepts. Okay. First concept is what's the basis of the decision to hire? All right? When you send in your materials, there's only two issues that they're interested in. The first issue is, can you do the job technically? That's the first thing they look at in your document. That's the first thing they have to have an answer to. Can you do the job technically? Can you get the monkeys off of my back? If you can't do that, they will go no further with your document. But this is very interesting. The basis of hiring, the basis of the hire is only 20% technical. 80% of the hiring decision, most of the hiring decision, every level, every organization is chemistry, fit, personality. Do I like you? Do I trust you? Do I want to sit across the room each morning, drink a cup of coffee, and look at your face? It's that guttural. But they will never get to this issue, fit, chemistry, and personality, unless you can do the job from a technical standpoint.
How do you deal with the fact that it seems that in most human resources departments, they want you to only be able to do that job. They don't want to know anything about other skills. If you have them, you're out.
We are in agreement that HR is not your audience.
It's not unfortunate.
Well, everybody hires in their own image, and you know that because when you were in the executive position, you hired in your own image. You know why? Because it creates a certain comfort level. Jocks hire jocks. Ex-military types hire ex-military types. Easygoing, laissez-faire hire other easygoing, laissez-faire types. Any question on this? Okay. The amount of time you have with the reader when they pick up your materials is 10 seconds. That's your window of opportunity. You have only 10 seconds. So why are you talking about your objective? You're wasting the 10 seconds you have with the reader. You either catch the reader's attention or it's over. Question in the back.
What do we replace the objective with, or what do we put in the objective to grab their attention? I guess you're coming to that.
We already did.
What do they want?
The question is, at the top of the resume, what are you going to cover? You're going to cover the two pieces of information that they want. They want to know first and foremost, within the first 10 seconds, can you do the job technically? If you don't answer that question, they toss it. I don't care if you fit. What good is it for you to come into my organization and fit in my department if you can't do the job technically? There's no purpose for me to even bother to try to figure out what you're like as a personality, because if you can't do the job technically, I won't even interview you. So what you have to do in the opening 2 paragraphs of your resume, and that's the reason I tell everybody to stop and go back and redo your marketing materials, is you have to answer these 2 questions. Can you do the job, and will you fit? And if your resume doesn't do that, stop the job search, because that's the orientation of the hiring person. And you know it, because that's exactly what you did when you were the hiring person. So why are you thinking like a candidate? Because this is the first time you've seen this.
I thought one of the assumption was the fact that you don't know if, I mean, you're writing to the senior managers because you don't know if they have it open.
Terrific. All right. The question is, if you're writing unsolicited to somebody, how do you know they have the position open or not? You don't need to know that they have the position open.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That, you know, then
Okay? All you need to know is that your background and experience may very well be better than the person that's occupying the position. There's an interesting concept, and let me introduce it to the group now. And this concept is called OPJs. It's a derivation of the very famous concept of OPMs. What are OPMs?
Other people's money.
Other people's money. So what do you think OPJs are? Other people's jobs. You know that there's a standard deviation distribution of workers in any level. You have your A workers, you have your F workers, and you have people in the middle. And you know that you've been in the same position where you know you got to get rid of somebody, but you just can't get around to it. Maybe because you don't want to fill out the paperwork for HR and have to deal with them. Maybe you don't want to advertise. So the person's marginal, and maybe you'll let them hang in a little longer, and whatever the motivation is. But if you hit that person with a document that says in 10 seconds, I can do the job and I can fit in your organization, and you can make money and save money off of me. I can make you look good. I can help you get a raise, a bonus, or a promotion. You're going to call that person and bring them in. Even if you don't have the need right now, you'll save the document. And you know from your own experience that when you got a superior resume, you filed it away just in case. Yes?
I don't quite understand how, if the 80% is so important, how you were supposed to tailor your, really the facts of your career to accomplish that. I understand that, you know, maybe you start with a summary of qualifications or whatever at the top.
Right.
That's a competency issue.
Right.
How then are you going to address the other 80%, which is more?
Well, that's one of the things that makes my counseling unique. It's based on 360 feedback that my clients do with people that they've worked with in the past. Peers, subordinates, and coworkers. Let me tell you an interesting story. There's a group called the AIBC, which stands for the IABC, International Association of Business Communicators. These are corporate, we can take a break in 5 minutes. Okay. These are corporate communication types. Public relations, corporate communications, etc., etc. And I did a talk for this group, and I got the highest response in terms of people working with me from this one seminar than any other seminar I've ever done in 20 years. And as the third, fourth, fifth person kept coming in to speak with me, I kept asking them the same question. How come I'm getting such a tremendous response from this group And I haven't gotten it from any of the alumni or other business groups that I've spoken to. And they all said the same thing, that they could research and write on any topic, regardless of its technical complexity, with one exception. You know what the exception was? Themselves. You're absolutely right. So, how do we build this into the document? We're certainly not going to use you because of Pogo, because of Lincoln, because of the Phil Sims quote. It's based on feedback from other people. It's part of the process that I use. Yes?
I still have a question. I mean, because, you know, what you're going to be sending, I mean, can you do the job? I mean, there are different functions within a certain organization, so still, you know, you can't be that specific. You know, how can you be specific?
How can you be specific is the question. Well, let me tell you. What most people don't understand is that what you do in your job, regardless of the kind of job that you do, is basically the same from company to company, from industry to industry. Let me give you an example out of the financial field. How many of you are in finance? Let me see your hands. We have 3 people, okay? Tell me if this is not accurate. It doesn't matter at what level you are in financial management. You do 5 things day in, day out. And it's what I call execution of the basics. That's what you're supposed to talk about in your resume. Not the fancy stuff, but execution of the basics. So let's take a look at the financial people. The first thing that they do day in, day out is accurate and timely financial reporting. The second thing is cash and working capital management. The third thing is accounting department and MIS department discipline, assuming that they have the MIS responsibility. 4, in good times, mergers and acquisition. And 5, in bad times, expense control. Now, the only thing I left out was the fancy stuff. And 1, paint by numbers, which is SEC reporting. Yeah, it's crazy. They want SEC reporting. You can give it to a clerk for crying out loud. So the key, and this is a major, probably one of the biggest problems everybody has. What do you include in the document? Well, let me just give you an example. Let's take Gordon. No,
Bishop?
Bishop, okay. Bishop, how long have you been in the job market since college? Or graduate school?
How long have I been in the job market?
Yes. How long have you been
30
working?
years.
How many? 30?
30 years.
30 years, okay. Now, is it fair to say that each year you've had 10 good accomplishments?
Yeah.
That's a low number.
Maybe less, but
Okay, let's use 10. It's a nice round number, okay? Well, if you're going to include the 30, if you're going to cover the 30 years, that's 300 accomplishments. You can't get 300 accomplishments into a 2 or 3 page resume. By the way, at your level, the middle and the top of the pyramid, almost always I'm involved with developing 3-page resumes. By the way, the issue isn't the length of the document. The issue is what do you do with the 10 seconds? Is that clear? Okay. All right, so the way you cut that down, of course, is you concentrate in the last 10 years. So now we're only dealing with 100 accomplishments. So now the question is, and this is interesting, and I'll give you a hint as to the answer. Of the 100 resumes, Bishop, of the 100 accomplishments, which ones do you include in your 3-page resume, and which ones don't you?
Well, I include about 15 or so.
But how do you know?
1-page resume.
Okay, but how do you know which ones to include? That's the major problem.
You try to tailor that to the job that you're going for.
Okay, the problem with that, there's a tremendous problem with that. The best cover letter is where you take the ad and you analyze it, and you have the left-hand column of their issues, and the right-hand column where you match it. The problem with customizing the cover letter and the problem with customizing the resume is that it's a form of punishment. And you know it. So what happens is, the first day you get 10, 12 out. The second day you get 8 out. The third day you get 3 out. And by the end of the week you stop. That's not this is a numbers game. You don't know where the needle in the haystack is. You have to get large numbers of paper out. So what you do with the resume is you create a resume that talks about the results of your analysis of the want ads. It's simple. It's a very simple concept. Collect a sample of ads in the same job description, minimum 10, and do a frequency analysis. What do they ask for, and what's the frequency? And that'll tell you what to put into the document. In the book that I co-authored 24 years ago, we have a want ad analysis for a financial analyst. And the four things they asked for a financial analyst 24 years ago is identical to what they're looking for now. They wanted to analyze financial statements, capital expenditure evaluation and analysis, good interpersonal skills and communication skills, and good computer skills. Nothing's changed in 24 years. Okay, let me just finish one point and then we'll take a break. All right, does everybody understand? Yes?
Can you cover can you include in the cover letter the main basics principle that you can do the job before the hiring process goes to the resume?
Let me ask you a question. The question is, can you include the fact that you can do the job in the cover letter? Let me tell you something, a secret about cover letters. Understand, you only have 10 seconds with the reader. Now, I'll give you an example, and this is from 3 years ago. Van Heusen Shirts in Bridgewater, New Jersey advertised in the Times and in the Journal for a CIO. It drew 6,000 resumes. Do you have any idea what 6,000 resumes look like? It would fill up this table. Now, somebody has to go through these things. All right? And guess what? Do you think we're going to read cover letters? Let me leave this point and we'll come back to it after the break. I'm going to teach you how HR can analyze any resume within 10 seconds. Yes, I know you agonize for hours, weeks, and months to create this document, but those of us who have these 6,000 to go through, we can analyze your document in 10 seconds. I'll give you the trick when we come back from the break. All right, I got around 5 after. Let's come back at a quarter after. Thanks very much.